Hi, welcome back to Crafting with Crystal. I'm Crystal. If you're coming back, welcome back. If this is your first time, please continue to come back to us so that you can do some crafting and some learning with us. Today we're going to be making a resin bookmark. We're going to make it two different ways just so you kind of have an idea of where you want to start. So this is what we will be making today. This is our regular resin bookmark. It does have color shifting powder in there, and I just added some stickers. You can add vinyl or anything like that. You want it to be super thin because of course this is going to be a bookmark. Unless of course you want it to be a decorative one, then add everything you want. So what I have here is all the materials that we're going to need, plus more. You're not going to need all of these, so if there's something that you don't have, don't worry about it. I'm just here to show you the basics. So let me show you what we have here. First off, when you're working with resin, you always want to have gloves, an abundance of gloves, because these will get sticky, especially if you're working with resin for the first time and you're going to want to constantly change them out. I tend to let them dry out, the resin build up on it, and then reuse them, just because I don't like to just keep throwing these away. We have our two resins here, our UV light cured resin. This one is the 25 milliliter, 0.85 fluid ounces. And then we have our alumite clear casting resin. You don't necessarily need this particular one. I have this one because I make tumbler cups, and it's safe for consumption. I mean, don't eat it. Please don't eat it. It's just safe for the cups. If you get it near your mouth, it's not going to bother it, and they're washable. So that's why I have this one, but you can use any casting resin. Okay, so we have here our disposable mixing cups. I got these at Family Dollar for $1. So you can get them anywhere. Normally I like to use silicone cups because they're easier to clean and you can reuse them. And I don't like throwing plastic and things away. But this is what I have to use for the moment. And we have our UV casting light. It is a plug-in, but it's not very long. So if you don't have a workstation, you will be moving around quite a bit to try to do that. We have our torch here so that we can get rid of any bubbles in our resin. We have plenty of crafting sticks and toothpicks to mix in and make little designs if we so choose. We have our color pigments here. You don't need these, but if you want them, they are available at Michael's and off of Wish. I happen to get mine off of Wish. So if you're a patient person and you like really cheap things, that's the place to go. Same thing with my molds. I have a mold here with random things, and then I have my bookmark mold, both of which I also got off of Wish. I have two molds today because I tend to overcompensate for my resin. There is a way to find out what you need to mix exactly, but if you're anything like me, you don't have time for that. So I have this extra one just in case I have extra resin, and then I can just pour it into these little things and have craft for later. So it's, a double win-win. You get your craft and then you get extra crafts just for later. I also have these cute little holographic animals. They're upside down, that doesn't help. They're not stickers. I got these off of Wish. They're not stickers, but you can cut them out, and the plastic that's clear, if you leave your resin clear, it will appear as if it's just the particular animal and not the cutout that you made. I'm going to try to see if it'll work with color changing pigment as well, or if you're going to be able to see that. So we'll see that live today. So the reason I'm doing these two different ways is because the curing time is a little bit different, and depending on how quickly you want to work will depend on what kind of resin that you're getting. So the average curing time with this is about 12 hours. You can start adding things and changing it up after about 3 hours. The first layer will start to harden, and then after 6-ish, then you can really start picking it up and messing with it. This one needs very little work at all. So you'll just pour it in, mix in whatever you want to mix, and then put the curing light over it for about a minute. With this one, you will notice that there can be a sticky residue left over. And if you're finding that and you're doing this along with me, it's because that this is meant for smaller molds, like jewelry, earrings, rings, things like that. They're not meant for large spaces like this. And again, you can use it that way. It's just going to be a little bit different because you'll have to cure it and cure it a second time. And then if that doesn't cure all the way, a third time's not going to help. You would need to set it out in the sun so that the UV rays can help harden the rest of this. I learned the hard way, and everything that I own got sticky. So please keep that in mind. This is meant for smaller things, but it still can be used. It's just going to be used in a different way. Additional materials that you could use are yarn, string, anything like that, because this is a bookmark, and it does come with that hole at the top, so you can thread anything that you need to through with it. I personally don't like things hanging off of my bookmarks, so I haven't done that, but if that's something that you'd like to see in a later video, then I will squeeze it into one. You can also add glitter. What you add to your resin kind of changes the way it will cure and the way that it will set up just a little bit, so you want to make sure that you have everything measured out the way it needs to be measured out. It's 1 part to 1 part, so it's going to have to be equal on both sides for it to work, at least with this one. This one you don't have to worry about. So if you enjoyed being here with us last time for our origami fun, just know that we are happy to have you. We are going to do a lot. The messiness is not the only reason you want to wear the gloves. These are very, very strong chemicals, so you do not want to be working with them on your flesh. I also forgot to mention that we are currently working in our innovation lab, which is about to be renovated. This is one of the many services we provide here at Clear Lake Freeman Branch. We do regret that we're not currently open, but hopefully this is the next best thing, using our curbside services, getting your books, having things printed out for you, and of course joining us for our channel. So let's get started. So first, what we're going to do is don our protective gear. So I have my mask here so that I don't inhale those fumes. My gloves. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with our UV resin. So this one has a lot more working time. And I don't have a lot left, so we're going to use this sparingly. So this one's going to be a very thin bookmark to start with. It's going to be about half this size. As you can see, there are 2 different colors here, that dark color and that gold color. But again, this was made from this. So this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply it directly to my mold, and then I'm going to use a toothpick to mix in some of this powder. I'm going to go ahead and pre-cut some of these before I show you what I'm doing. That way I can just place them in there. Alright, so hopefully you can see my setup here. This one I'm not going to need to use this extra mold with, just because I'm going to use it very precisely. You can just squeeze it in here and then add your color afterwards, because you have a lot of working time with this. And I'm just going to add it straight to my mold. Now you don't have to fill it up all the way. If you notice, I do have some gaps in my corners. but we're just going to use a toothpick and move this around. This is an easy way to save your resin, just because your resin is going to be very thick, so it won't mold as easily into those corners unless you help it out. And if it does mold into those corners, you probably used it a lot more than you actually needed to. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go ahead and try to remove as many bubbles as I can. And you're just going to use your lighter and kind of hover over this. You don't want to stay on it too long because the flames can harden it just a little bit. I am going to do this a couple different ways. So I have my little holographic whale here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the front of the whale face down because the bottom of this mold is going to be the front of it, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to go ahead and lay one here at the top, like that. And then I'm going to open my changing pigment. There it goes. And I'm going to just kind of shake some in the bottom. I'm only going to do this halfway. You don't need a lot. That might have been too much, but we're going to add a little more just in case. Work sparingly because you want to save as much of your crafts as you possibly can. So we're just going to mix this in here. Might take a little while just because I used it very sparingly. You can pre-mix this before you set it into your mold. In fact, it might work even better that way. The reason I didn't was because I have such little of it left. So I am going to have to take the time to actually really mix this in before all of these bigger chunks kind of go away. And I'm only going to go up about halfway because what I want to do is show y'all and learn myself how well these holographic cutouts work on both clear and colored resin. So this is what it looks like so far. I've already made a mess. Just wipe off that powder pigment from the sides here. Once you're done mixing or you're satisfied with where you've mixed it at, again, you can be creative and leave chunks in there, not leave chunks in there. It's completely up to you. I'm going to fire it up again just to make sure that me mixing it didn't add bubbles, which I can already see that it did. And there they go popping. I wish I could show you this up close. I don't currently have that ability. And you could, I'm not sure if you could see, but it is smoking, so that's the point you want to stop and then give it a rest and then go back to it. Okay, so now that we've done that, I am going to find the front of my other little whale here, and I'm going to kind of dig it into this so that it's at the bottom of that. So that way it'll be at the front. And you'll notice the resin is kind of just pulling into that so that it's going right over it. Again, this resin is really easy to work with because you can just kind of shift stuff around. What I also have here is this butterfly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put half on and half off just to kind of see what that's going to look like. So I'm just going to shift this a little bit, push it all the way down, and then let the resin kind of glue back into the spot. You can help it along the way, you can wait for it. I'm choosing to wait for it at the moment so that I can kind of gauge where I'm at. Okay, so what we can do now is we're going to light cure it. Alright, so I ended up having to move to the floor because I have a very short cord on my light cure here. But this is all you have to do. Just place it on top and press the button on top and let it run. What I like to do, instead of moving it across the bookmark, which is what some people will do, is I like to take it section by section. Once that's done, I'm going to move it a little bit up. Once that's done, I'm going to move it a little bit up. And then for good measure, I am going to cure it a second time the same way. Start from the bottom, middle, and then the top. And then we'll see where we're at. Okay, so this happened the last time I worked with this as well. I'm not sure if it's my mold or if it's the UV resin itself wanting to bubble up. But if you can see, it kind of has some give here. Oh, that's very hot, so make sure you don't touch it. But when you're working with the UV resin in a bigger mold, there's no guarantee that it's going to, again, cure all the way through, which could possibly make it bubble, which is why you want to use it sparingly, and which is why it's used on smaller objects. I don't mind because it is a bookmark and I'm going to have it between pages. It's not going to matter if it's a little bubbled or not. It's up to you. It's your preference. And again, I don't mind. I don't see any reason why that should affect the way it functions as a bookmark, especially if you're just starting this out and you're starting this completely new. So I'm kind of used to the heat, so it doesn't bother me as much, but what I'm doing is pressing down on the spaces that haven't cured on the bottom where it's bubbling up, and it's kind of fixing itself. So it's probably something you can do. You might not want to use your hands just because it is really hot, but you can use a stick or, a craft stick or something just to flatten it out as it's curing. Okay, so this is after our second cure. I took it out of the mold, and as you can see, it didn't fully cure all the way. So what I'm going to do is I turned it over so that the front is facing me, and I'm going to cure it one more time, just kind of all over. Again, if this doesn't cure the rest of it, I will have to place it in the sun so that it can harden all the way, but it will not cure completely if you just set it out. So just remember that if it's sticky, it will remain sticky unless you go through the extra step to leave it out in the sun to let it harden. Okay, so here is the finished product. Again, it did bow just a little bit, but it is resin, so it's flexible. It's not going to affect the way it's being used at all. After that second cure, when I flipped it over, well, technically the third, it did harden most of what was sticky, but I still have some stickiness up here. So I will have to leave it out in the sun, but this is the finished product. So I can still see the outline of where I cut that first whale. It does, kind of blend in, but you can still see it. So the butterfly, not so much. That seemed to come out a little bit better. You can still kind of see that outline there, but it's a lot better. And then this one, you can almost completely not see it. If I had added more resin and mixed it up a little more in this area, or possibly laid down some resin first, you might not have been able to see that. And I think that's actually what happened. If I had laid down a clear coat of resin and cured that before I added the second coat of resin and mixed this in and placed my decals, then it probably would have blended in a bit better. And I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. This is the first time I am working with these little decal things, so it's not a complete fail. And just remember that this is like just the basics. just the very basics of working with resin and molds. So now that that's done, I've cleaned out my mold. I do still have some of that other resin here, and I don't mind so much if my molds have that resin on the outside, because it's not going to affect the inside, and that's why I didn't clean that up there. Make sure that you keep your work area clean. Again, the resin is very, very sticky, which is why you want the gloves, and you want to put something down so that it's not touching your tables or anything. You don't want to get all messy. Okay, so now we are going to do the Amazing Clear Casting resin. So we have a part A and a part B. Do not put these in the same bottle. Do not store them in the same bottle. It will harden. It is a cast. You will do 1 part by 1 part. So however you're measuring that is up to you. Again, if you want extra resin or if you want more resin, I tend to use these so that I can mix it in. It probably would have gone better if I'd been able to do this, but I only have this 1 bottle, and I didn't realize I was so low. So make sure you have enough before you get started. So we're going to mix 1 part A with 1 part B. I usually have little measuring cups for this, but again, everything that I have is currently out of the way. It's been destroyed for some reason. So we have these little solo cups, and what I like to do is I like to go by these lines here, and just do about half and then do the other half. And usually that gets me about half of what I need, and then I do it again so that I can lay down another layer, because I'm usually stacking colors on top of each other, like this one. So on this one I laid the gold layer down, and then I went back 3 hours later and I laid the other color down. I'm gonna lay it down all at once just because we don't have the time to go back over it here today. We're just going to use the 1 color, that way we're not making this too complex for you. So I'm going to do about half A, not the cup, just this bottom part, and I'm eyeballing it just because I have OCD and I know where I want it. Kind of turn it so that you can catch the rest of it. Make sure you close it right away. And then the other half. I wish I had a clear cup to show you, but unfortunately I do not. So they're both in there now, and what we're gonna do is we're going to mix it for a good minute or 2. You want to make sure that it's thoroughly mixed, because if it's not thoroughly mixed, it will not thoroughly cure. And it will also, you also have a higher chance of creating bubbles while you're working and while it's sitting out. I'm gonna go ahead and add my pigment. Now the instructions say to mix for up to 3 minutes, just so that you are 100% sure that you've mixed it thoroughly enough. And I completely agree with that. If you're mixing it under 3 minutes, it's probably not going to turn out very well. And I believe I made too much resin this time, which is okay because that's what we have our other mold here for. This one I'm not going to add the decals just because they didn't work out on the UV resin one, and again, we don't have time to lay down that first layer, but this will be just as nice, or better, hopefully better than the resin one we did. Okay, so we're going to place that down, and we're just going to fill that in. Again, you don't have to fill it in all the way. We're going to take one of our toothpicks and just guide it into those areas. You can also pick it up and shift it, move it around. I don't like doing that just because after working with the resin already, my hands are usually sticky, my gloves are usually sticky, and I would rather not just keep adding to the stickiness everywhere. Okay, so that's nice and even now. We're going to just try to create some flow to the color that is here because it is a color shifting. You can't see it right here on screen, but there's a noticeable difference between the shifting of the colors. So once you start working with it and you mix it around, you'll notice that it'll make the pattern. It may not stay that way, but that's what it is. So I do have some extra resin, so I'm gonna go ahead and just choose a couple of these. And we're gonna get rid of those bubbles. Let me see if I can get a close-up of popping these bubbles because there's quite a few on this one. I think that's the funnest part of all of this. Look at all those bubbles. All right, so that's it. Once this cures, this is going to look like this. And again, it is resin, so it's a little bit of a plastic. It is gonna have some bend to it, just like this one. Oh, I forgot that was sticky. They will harden over time, but not too much. They're meant to have a little bit of give and be soft and plastic feeling, if that makes any sense. So these will cure for about 12 hours. It's very messy. So you do want to have that protective gear on, your gloves and your mask. You want to have something lying down on your workspace so that you're not getting it everywhere, because once it dries, that's it. It's going to be hard to get off unless you have some power tools. There are people that do this, a little bit neater and a little prettier, probably a different, perhaps easier way, although I don't know what way would be easier than what I'm already doing. But not everyone is the same, and everyone doesn't understand in the same way. So I'm just doing this in the most natural, spontaneous way that any other creative person might do this. Just go grab it, put it together, lay it out, and then, have a nice, fun mess to clean up afterwards. It's really, for me, about having fun. But for others, it's probably more of a business. So they want to make sure that it's neater, it's measured exactly. But I'm just, again, giving you the basics, so please bear with me. I know it may not look the prettiest, but I guarantee that it always works out. If you don't like this mess here on the sides, all this extra gooiness, while it's still pliable, you can wipe it off. I don't much mind because it's just something that I do for fun, and I can always cut it down later. That way you can clean up your edges. I'm not sure if you can see that. Let me do that again. Okay, so let's see here. We're gonna wipe up some here, and some there. So it comes right up. It's going to be a little tedious if you don't measure it out the way you want it measured out, or if you're doing it the way that I'm doing it, which is kind of spontaneous and just going with the flow. But it can be wiped up. It can be cleaned after you've laid it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and run my lighter over all of this one more time. And you wanna do that maybe 3 or 4 times in the first hour, just to make sure that as it's settling and sitting flat and not being moved, that it doesn't cause any more bubbles to come up. And you can use those little barbecue torches, and you can use a match. You can use just about anything. This is just a lot easier because it's kind of one and done. It just goes all over. It is slightly dangerous, so you do want to make sure that you are working carefully, or if you're younger, that you have an adult with you. Just make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, that you're having fun, because that's what this is about. If it doesn't turn out right the very, very first time, it's okay. You have the product with you. Keep trying. And you may not want to keep buying things over and over again, but you're not going to get any better by giving up. So please don't give up. Keep coming back here and learning new things with me. Maybe making a mess of things and possibly making mistakes, but we're at least going to get it done and make sure that we have something nice when it comes out. If not for the UV one, I guarantee the regular resin one will definitely come out beautiful, which is why I personally like working with that one more, which is why I don't have more of this. So keep that in mind when you're out shopping, when you're gathering your crafts, whenever you're bringing this out to have fun with, maybe even with your friends. Make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area. Again, safety is key. Safety is number one. You want to make sure that everything you do is geared towards your health, your safety. Do not inhale these fumes, air out whatever room you're in, and make sure that you wear a mask and gloves. All right, here we are. A little over 48 hours later. I have let my molds cure. I did tell you before you can start working with them after 3 hours if you want to, add more resin to it. I didn't add any more resin just because I wanted to show you the complete process in a good amount of time. So you remember our UV resin, it still has some give. It's a lot less sticky. Well, it's not sticky at all anymore. It is a little bit rough. Fortunately, I know a little bit more about the casting resin. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this out of my mold, peel it out of there. This one is very thin because I only used about half of the mold, and it has a lot of give. So you can add stickers to this. It has that multi-chrome color. Can't really see it with this lighting. And then of course we had our extra molds. I did go ahead and peel a few out of there already. And I think I got most of them. You can see where they overlapped a little bit, but like I told you, they're pretty easy to manipulate afterwards. So you can just tear off the excess, you can cut it off, you can grind it down, but they all came out really easily. And I wish you could see the colors. They're actually really beautiful. Thank you again for joining us this week for our resin craft and for experimenting with me. Again, I always like to say that nothing has to be perfect. If you want to get into something and you want to get into crafting, do it and then do it again and then do it again and do it some more until you perfect the way that you would like it done. I actually don't work with the UV resin as much, which is why this one probably didn't come out as well as it possibly could have. But it's still usable. Still use it as the bookmark. And of course the casting resin. Do not worry about making mistakes. Do not worry about messing things up. If you are worried about the cost, then use your supplies sparingly. You don't have to fill the molds up all the way. You can do a thin layer until you figure out what it is that you want to do. I don't want to limit you to one way of doing things. This is just the way that I do it. So hopefully you had fun this week, and hopefully we see you again next week. Hope you all enjoyed. Come back and see us next time. Clear Lake Freeman Library thoroughly hopes that you enjoyed yourself and that you continue coming back to us. Have a great day. It's not the messiness. I'm kind of like Ricky Bobby with my hands. Don't know what to do with my hands. Okay, pressing.
I don't reference you have a call park at 5435. I don't reference 5435.
It's just to get this powder into fun flowingness. That's not even a word. Why do I keep doing this? That mold all the way. But you can use a Q-tip.
I don't reference you have a call mark. Extension 5436.